Yay, editing! Editing hype.
Editing hype, technology hype.
Okay. Well then, welcome on in.
Hey,
So,
I'm
no,
Zombiepaper.
yeah, you are. Look at you over there, your little green square.
Yeah.
So today's gonna be a little different. Because we're using draw pile, I have rearranged my entire desk so that I have access to my drawing tablet.
Oh,
But
nice.
because I have access to my drawing tablet, my model is gonna be my body is gonna freak out a little bit. So you're gonna have to ignore the weird things that my body is gonna do while I look down at my tablet and draw things. Uh, that's the only thing I want to make clear, and have fun with the silly faces.
Yeah, I'm recording on my side as well. We're doing basically a collaborative event. I'm not promoting my side. Just throwing that out there. If that's too distracting, you might see what it looks like on my side, I guess. So it'd be, oh no, self promo.
It's all right. Everyone does it. It's all right. um. So yeah. Welcome on in, Zoe Paper. You
Thank you.
said you were doing well when I asked you before, but I'm gonna ask you again. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I have anxieties and stresses that are going on in my life that are in the background. But as far as
Wonderful.
right now and in this exact moment, I'm doing pretty well. I was doing some writing a little bit earlier. Now I'm doing some drawing, and I see some drawing happening right over here.
Yeah, I'm testing it out because I haven't used Droppile in a while. Um, but yeah, do you want to get started right into the questions?
Certainly.
All right. I remember the eraser in Droppile is weird because if you erase something and then you try to draw over it, it okay, no, never mind. I just used the wrong eraser then. I figured it out. I'm figuring it out.
Very nice. Figuring out hype.
I'm figuring it out. Okay. First question is why did you accept the invite?
Oh, yes.
Yep, yep, yep.
You'd mentioned that I shouldn't be thinking too much about this, but I happened to watch the previous episode,
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
to kind of wander through and see kind of what I was getting myself into.
For sure.
Um, and that was the first question, which was, uh, what was the interest? And the idea was to be natural, to not have any kind of canned response. So
Yeah.
this is as most of the canned response as I can uh, qualify by saying that. By hearing about that, I was thinking, well, why would I want to appear on it basically ostensibly an interview, right?
Yeah.
Like this is an interview, although we've been friends for what, 2 years now? Like
Year and
practically
a
2 years?
half. Well, we've known about each other, I guess. Yeah, I guess we're friends. Yeah.
Yeah, I
We've
mean,
done stuff together. Yeah.
I think of us as friends.
Okay,
I think
cool.
of most folks as friends that I work with. That
Oh,
it,
that's how we do it. Okay. Yep.
outside of maybe professional work. So if it's professional work, it's like I don't know if we're really friends, but
Uh-huh.
if we can talk about anything without like you narking me out to the cops, then hey, that's fine.
Mhm, mhm,
Of like
mhm.
of like, zombie paper here thinks that work is kind of dumb sometimes, and I want a promotion, kind of a thing. So that's all a tangent to warm up my brain in terms of why I would want to appear on something like this. Is the manufactured answer I had was that it's really good to get outside your comfort zone,
Mm.
um,
Is this your
because
comfort zone?
let's see. So recording video, I should say, is a comfortable place for me.
Uh-huh.
I've recorded hundreds of hours of material in the past 2 years. So I'm very comfortable doing that. I'm very comfortable talking to a microphone, and I'm very comfortable writing. So
Mhm.
these kinds of things are just like, especially in an improv environment like this, it's very easy to be insecure about like, I said something stupid. It's like, oh,
Mhm. Oh no, my voice cracked.
yeah, my voice cracked or I need to cough. And those
Yeah.
sorts of things, like, yeah, especially if you say something embarrassing that offends people, like, you have to own up to it, right? It's fair. But
Mhm.
it's like if you say stuff and people are looking to get you, they're gonna get you no matter what. So just
Yeah, that's true.
accept that as part of the performance. So doing something like this of being interviewed, if you will, is like the first time I've been interviewed in this capacity. So yeah, that's where I was like, "Hey, this is cool," and plus hanging out with you and drawing is always a fun time, so I was like,
Mhm.
"Why not?"
All right. Fair enough.
Yeah,
Next question.
sure.
What do you do?
What do I do in terms of, me as Zombiepaper or me as legal name redacted?
Your choice. Your pick.
So what I do as Zombiepaper is I because the legal name redacted is like your government entity that pays taxes and
Yep.
works a job. I'm looking for work, which is part of the anxiety. But
Mm.
legal name redacted, I do. I would say my portfolio consists of six main things. So I'll go ahead and list this out for the audience at home. So first, I do podcasting.
Mhm.
So podcasting I do as part of the semi-interactive podcast um, project, I guess I'd say for legal purposes. So SIP.
Mhm.
So this is a SIP AAA,
Mhm.
which is adjacent artistic artistry, I believe is the order I have for that. Yeah, I do. So do
Yeah.
podcasting. I do art. I work on big silly projects that take way too long. I'm in the process of working on an album cover for a friend of mine that has been delayed for a while because I haven't got to that. Whoops.
Oops. It's okay.
Occasionally, yeah, it happens. He's cool with it. He's like, I did it as like, here, I want to draw an album cover for you. And as long as like, here's the thing with the artist side of things is you this is a free thing that I'm doing, no cost commission, for friends only. If I don't know you, commission rates are different. But for friends, hey, uh, work on an album cover. There is ostensibly a rush to get it done in a certain amount of time, but the communication is the factor where it's like, hey, I haven't done this in a while. Sorry. And it's like, yeah, that's cool. So
Mhm.
keep in communication is the best way to have any kind of reputation. And I'm a very slow artist as well, and I do it like in when I make stuff in Microsoft Paint in my 20 color aesthetic. Draw pile is a lot easier. So
Mhm. Yeah.
uh, there's 2/6 of what I do. Next is video game stuff. Where I play video games as slowly as humanly possible because I find
Nice.
that to be really fun. So
So
I
when you
recently
mean slow, do you mean you like do it slowly or do you just engage with all the content?
I engage with all the content. So if I am playing a role playing game, which are the games that I prefer, I could find myself in a room where I suddenly need to analyze every little detail of that room.
Mm.
Um, which, for example, I did recently with a game where there was it's in a cyberpunk world. It's called Jack Move, and in the game there were several points where I was just like, "Oh, we're going to be in this room for like 20 minutes talking about what's going on here, so pull up a chair and listen."
I see. Nice.
I did that with Final Fantasy VII as well,
Oh
where I did
gosh.
this as a live broadcast. Back when my OBS was able to connect to Twitch.
Mhm.
Now my computer is too old to make that happen, but I spent 4 hours in Cosmo Canyon just hanging out and, uh, let's
Chilling.
just say oh, sorry?
Chilling. You were
Chilling,
just
yeah.
chilling in Canyon.
Heck yeah, and let's just say that, the people that got it really got it, and the people that didn't were just like, "What the heck are you doing?"
Just play the game, old man.
Yeah, exactly, old person over there, just go ahead and keep on going where it's like, uh, you realize that I'm here to have fun, and this is how I'm having fun, so
Yeah.
yeah, so then to continue back, I also do a lot of writing stuff, as recordings, so I'll take, let's say some essays that I would normally write offline, and then I'll just talk them through. I'll just write it. I use WordPress. I publish them on my website, and I just go through and write about what I'm going to be. I verbalize when I write. It's becoming a very seamless process.
Nice.
So it's something that I'm doing. And I'm also helping a friend of mine with editing a story that he's working on. And
Mm.
so I'm
Mhm.
doing like a live editing kind of thing. So uh, basically, with that side of it, I'm taking the writing side of things and making it more accessible for people because they can listen and watch. And uh, a lot of it too is like if I make any mistakes in the writing process and you see it, then you can leave a comment and say like, "Hey, Zombie Paper, you're an idiot. You did this instead of that." It's like, "Oh,
You did it
okay."
wrong.
So then the other two, I can kind of lump together nice and neatly as in terms of like online and offline content. So online and offline content would be like, I recently went to a park and so I recorded a video just hanging out. So that would be
Mhm.
like offline stuff. And then online would be like training material because my career in technical support meant I learned a lot of esoteria about a lot of stupid bullshit. So I've been able to train a lot of people on how to do things. Of like, someone will call up and be like, "I don't know how to work this widget," and I'd be like, "I don't know how to work that either. So let's figure it out together."
Mm. Cool.
So yeah, that's me in a very convoluted, rambly sort of way. But if your audience doesn't know, that's how I am.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's how it is.
Yeah.
That's what makes zombie paper.
Yeah, you get to experience a little bit of my life through listening to this. I experience all of my life simultaneously, so what you experience is just a little small glimpse into how it's like when it's like someone says something, and then immediately it's like, ah, I have to spend the next hour thinking about this. Okay, we're doing this,
Uh, what?
but in a good way.
Okay. That's how it does that. Um,
Oh, fancy.
I'm trying. The next question is, why do you do what you do?
So that is an interesting question, because there are certain perspectives on life that I can adopt depending on the situation. Um, with my writing, I almost feel like it's compulsory. Like I have no real choice in the matter.
Mhm.
Um, Not like I'm being guided by some force outside of my own will, but more of, if I want to write literature with novels and fiction and nonfiction to any degree of, competency, then that means that I must sacrifice many elements of myself of, like, hanging out and playing a video game casually, hanging out and doing some stupid stuff that maybe doesn't matter. Everything must go toward that singular goal, which means that many aspects of my life have to, and I've been better about this, but revolve around that kind of goal seeking. So why I do what I do is because I want to write literature and I want to do silly stuff like art and all this, and doing the recording helps me actually do those things versus like if it's like, oh, I want to write literature. Well, that'll happen at some point in the next 20 years when everything's all secure and everything's all settled down. But That's never going to happen. So I could say that, or I could say because it's fun. I like to engage in these ways. I like to look at say a video game like that video game I was playing through. Um, I could have done that offline privately, but recording all of that, especially as a new game, that was valuable feedback to provide along for bug fixes and all that kind of stuff. So it's
Mhm.
that, it's advertising, it's content, and my relationship with content is like everyone does it whether they know it or not, so I might as well have it in a way that I can guide it along, and I can say this is what my content is versus other people making content on my behalf that maybe I'm like, that ain't me.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Thanks.
Um, Next question is, do you make things?
By making, do you mean like digital materials, or do you mean like videos, or do I make craft projects, or what do you mean
Could
by
be
that?
anything. What kind of things
So
do you make?
every day for the last 4.5 years, I've written at least 500 words as part of an essay, essay a day kind of a thing, like the Seinfeld method of you write every day, you write a joke every day, and eventually it'll be funny.
Mhm.
I guess whether whether that means quantity over quality is subjective, but yeah, I write essays daily. I write about like how things are going in my life primarily, but I also try to mix it up too, because I don't want it to be a diary. I want it to be like analysis of life kind of stuff. So
Mhm.
I make that every day, and basically that will be a part of my life. It has been a part of my life for the last 6 years, but over the last 4 years, it's been a major component of that. Outside of that, occasionally I draw. I haven't really got into any big projects other outside of that. Well, I do for the podcast. I draw background stuff every pretty much every week, so I do little bits of that. Um, and then I do other things here and there. I make stuff for whenever I feel like I need a tool. Then I go figure out can I build this tool or do I need to buy it? So I'm fairly savvy like that, but yeah, I'd say like I'm not adverse to making things. In fact, I like the idea of like, oh, I made this. This is something that is mine or ostensibly mine, and something that can be useful or helpful.
Mhm. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Um, you're gonna really like this question. Everyone loves this question.
All right, I'm listening for it.
Why do you really make things?
Same reason. There's no real difference. I don't. So a lot of what I look at in life, and like before talking with you, I was writing a bit of a review about a friend of mine's new album that came out, and talking about the idea of parasocially. I know the musician maybe a lot more than most people, so my insight into lyrical content relating to like a an emotional, vulnerable set of lyrics is something where I have a sort of unique insight into how that all works. Where my
Mhm.
friend Cecily Renz made this album that is like it's titled what is it? Dysfunctional Bunny Girl is the name of the album, and so something where it's like, oh, there are certain bits where maybe we could think, oh, hey, it looks like Cecily is overcoming some problems in her life, and things are now working a lot better. But I don't know Cecily enough to ask those kind of questions if I don't know her as in like going and asking these questions, and I feel it's somewhat inappropriate to ask these questions if you don't know the person very well. So, as far
Mhm.
as making the material, I do it because I think it's fun and I enjoy doing this material. So, as far as if someone is doing something for any kind of other reason, monetary, like, hey, that'd be nice to get money off of doing stuff like this, and that is
Yeah.
a long-term plan. But as far as doing this today, I'm doing it because it sounds fun. It's interesting. I like drawing, and yeah, I think that's where if we dig too deeply into asking questions like this, it can get really tricky. It can be insightful, but depending on the situation, it's like if someone says, "Oh yeah, I wrote a lyric about a cat," that doesn't mean the lyric is actually about French literature or something. It could just be
Uh-huh.
about the cat.
Could just be about the cat. Yeah, I like that.
Thank you.
Um, okay, yeah. So you make things because it's a journalism of your life, right?
It could be. I get kind of bored of being passive when it comes to passively consuming art or video games. So if especially in regards to literature, so this will be a little bit of a tangent, but I think this explains literature very well. Where a lot of people get bored of reading a book, like say you get like one of the classics or whatever, and you're just kind of reading it, and you're like, this is dumb. I don't really care about it. Well, that's
Mhm.
because you're only looking at it surface level, and you're not engaging with it. You're not taking the material and you're saying, um, so let's draw a little example here. So if you're looking at a book over here, and you're like, well, that doesn't look like a book, but whatever, it's fine. So if you're like, well, that's a book over there, and this is me,
Mhm.
and you don't do anything with it other than just have it on your bookshelf, well, what was the point of even having the book? Whereas if you open the book, opening the book could be as matter of factly of just having the book open, and I guess we're having the book out like this, and you drain out all the material and all that kind of goes down. And it's like, okay, now all this goes inside your brain matter. So there's your brain. And then your brain is happy because you've learned something new. Cool. It could be something like that, but as far as just having that as an object on your shelf, like, what's the real point of that? So, that's where I look at media in general, where if I interact with the media, I am changing the media by me interpreting how the media works in regards to how everything else I've experienced throughout my life works.
Mhm.
With the example of both Final Fantasy VII and Jack Move, that having done those will help me inform how I play other games, how I experience other media. So for me, passively consuming content of just let and wash all over me is something that I did growing up, and I was very bored by it. I wasn't very interested in a lot of stuff until I realized, hey, all of this is stuff that I can look at this material and I can say, what does it mean for this to be in this material versus what does it mean for this to be absent in this material, and do the analysis. So
Mm.
yeah, that kind of makes my brain bigger in some regards, but also just what I do in my life. Like if I don't record it, I'm going to be doing it anyways. I'm going to be looking to see what does all this mean. So if I document that, my assumption is if I think it will help at least one person out, I will record it and I will upload it, whether it's a video or an essay. Whereas if I think it's just like kind of stupid, maybe common sense stuff that maybe I've written about 1,000 times, I'm not going to do it.
Okay. All right. Um, thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh yeah, of course.
The next question is, who is someone you like?
From what perspective?
Um, just who's someone that you're like, I like that person. Not romantically, just like I like them. I think they're neat.
So I have two examples that come to mind. Both in the proximity to where I live in the greater Seattle area. which is Bruce Lee and Jimi Hendrix, uh,
Mm.
both of whom are buried in this area. And I went to visit the grave of Bruce Lee actually on Thursday. This is Sunday, the 23rd of October, 2022. For those that are keeping track, if not, sorry. But yeah, so I would say Bruce Lee. We'll go ahead and write their names here. So Bruce Lee is someone that I consider to be, as I told a friend of mine that I went with, pretty much is like, hey, we could visit Bruce Lee or we could visit Jimi Hendrix. Which one do you want to go see? And so we did a coin toss, and it was Bruce Lee. But so for Bruce Lee, I'll start off with him, where I look at his so like he's made some movies and all that kind of stuff. That's how most people know him. That's how I was introduced to his life. But in my perspective, uh, Bruce Lee is a lot more than just um, a kung fu artist that performed in front of a camera. That would be
Mhm.
very surface level. Uh, I look at him as being a philosopher, as someone who took a lot of ideas and mixed them together, mixed them around. He is also someone who I look up to as far as I despise racism. I'm very much an anti-racist, and I look to see that with Bruce Lee, he married Linda Lee in a time of the Jim Crow laws where racism was still rampant. It was 1963, 64, I believe it was. And it was something that for him to go do things like that, or to say whoever wanted to attend his martial arts school could do that. Before that, it was very much a insular kind of school with all the kind of martial arts out there across the world, where it was like, we're only going to train people that we personally know.
Mhm.
Where Bruce Lee was like, if you want to join and you want to keep up with me, then go for it. Hey, we'll do that. And I think that that is a very valuable thing. That before Bruce Lee, there was a lot of Asian hatred. There was a lot of this kind of bullshit that needed to go away, and I look to Bruce Lee as single-handedly helping with that. Now, the degree to which we could imagine him as being like a superhuman superhero,
Mhm.
uh, I don't know. Me with my kind of, I would almost say, like, childlike wonder when it comes to these sorts of mythological people that did exist. I
Mhm.
think of like, yeah, I would like to imagine that Bruce Lee was superhuman, moving faster than the ability of any camera at the time to capture how fast he was. I would like to imagine that he was so incredibly able to overcome things that he had a disability with his back. He broke his back, and
Mm.
doctors told him, "You can never do anything again. You're going to be just stuck." And 6 months later, he was out doing martial arts again. Like, something like that is very profoundly inspirational for me,
Mhm.
but that's also at the same time something I was thinking about as with Jimi Hendrix. I was thinking about how there is an interview by the band Death Grips where someone asked the lead, uh, the the rapper MC Ride, who is the main vocalist of Death Grips, who are some of your influences? So I kind of just stole that.
It's alright. Go ahead.
So with MC Ride, he was saying, I don't really look up to people. Not like in kind of a rude way, but just
Mhm.
because you want to do your own thing. You don't want to follow the lead of other people.
Mhm.
And so MC Ride just kind of almost weakly said, I look up to Jimi Hendrix, of course, um, to give an obligatory answer to this interviewer.
Mm.
But it's like you think of the mind of Jimi Hendrix, where he only lived to be 27 years old, and yet you ask any musician, any guitarist of any degree of study, you ask like, "What do you think of Jimi Hendrix?" And they're all going to tell you like he was one of the best. And It's like you listen to any of his songs, like you listen to Purple Haze versus Fire versus Machine Gun, they're all radically different. And it's like the Jimi Hendrix Experience only had 3 albums, yet they all changed the world in a profound way with music, and it's like, "Whoa." That's really, really cool. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd say Bruce Lee and Jimi Hendrix, not in that order. It just happened to be that I most recently visited Bruce Lee. I
Mhm.
visited the grave of Jimi Hendrix before, and uh, he's got a really cool monument. It's very much like for both actually. The grave of Bruce Lee um, has a really cool epitaph. Let me go look that up here really quick to cite that because it was like it was it was really cool. So just give me that quick moment here while my computer slowly loads everything. And it's a good example why I like Bruce Lee too. So the gravestone says, "Your inspiration continues to guide us toward our personal liberation," and
Mm.
that's a very profound idea. Where you can look at Bruce Lee's movies, you can look at Game of Death, you can look at Enter the Dragon. Well, what's left of Game of Death? There's an edited version released around the year 2000 that took the living material of like what actually Bruce Lee did, like the fights that he did with
Mhm.
the various folks, and it gave context to what it would have been like compared to all the Bruce exploitation movies that were kind of like, oh, Bruce Lee died, let's go ahead and
Mm.
capitalize on all that. So
Mhm.
it's like you could look at Bruce Lee solely as a martial artist and feel inspired to become physically fit, or you look at Bruce Lee as a philosopher and become, say, mentally fit.
Mhm.
Eh, and the same with Jimi Hendrix, where you can listen to his music and just think like, wow, that's really cool guitar tones. Or you can think of like same thing where I I haven't quite studied Jimi Hendrix's life as much as Bruce Lee, but it's like I imagine he overcame a lot of racism and combated a lot of that himself. And without Jimi Hendrix, I imagine that we'd be a lot further away from where we should be going, which is toward the anti-racism, anti-sexism, anti-transphobia perspectives in life that limit us. Whereas if we overcome that uh, bigotry, then we can be liberated to kind of co-opt the message on the gravestone there. So that's
Mm.
kind of my meandering answer toward the two folks, one or two folks that I think I look up to. And funnily enough, neither of these people do recordings on any major platform. They passed away a long time ago, but
Mhm.
you can find inspiration in whomever, even if it's not in a field that you directly work in.
For sure.
To your audience.
I feel like you've already answered this next question though, which is
Mm.
what do you like about them? I think you went into depth on that.
Oh
Uh
yeah, I definitely did.
so we're gonna skip past that one. You already answered it. Um uh Next question is what do you like about yourself?
Those are always the good questions, right?
Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh.
It's like the interview question of tell us about yourself. So I'm going to start with this kind of abstractness as I kind of form the answer. Um, so I was learning about this by way of interviewing, where the question "Tell us about yourself" is a misnomer in that the interviewer of critical nature doesn't want to know anything about you, the you that is sitting there, the you that plays video games or does whatever.
Mhm.
Uh, what the interviewer only cares about is in what context to the job do you matter? Are you a hard worker? Can you prove that? If so, then we need hard workers, so that's a good fit. Um, that sort of a thing. So
Mhm.
I need to first give that as context because if I say, "Oh yeah, I like myself because I like the green smile," something that I think is pretty neat, then there's no real outward context for that. And I think that's actually the nature of your question. You're not asking, what do I, as on paper, like in comparison to my value that I give toward others? And it's not your question, right?
No, it's not.
It's what do I, as on paper, think of me as on paper, or
Mhm.
me as myself? Which, to be clear, I feel that zombie paper is closer to myself than the legal name redacted, who pays taxes and pays rent and all that kind of stuff. What I like about myself is that I can come up with really neat ideas. I like that I can explore those ideas to fruition and I can see the fruits of my labor by way of having those done.
Mhm.
So, for example, if we go back up here to like doing podcast stuff, like say, like, hey, like you were like, hey, do you want to do an interview? I was like, yeah, let's do that. Especially with the context of a podcast, doing some art, then, and I'm looking over at your art with the cave. That's really neat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm drawing a cave.
It is a really cool cave, whereas I'm just kinda doodling about, like, answers to your questions.
Well, hey, I ask you the questions. You need to answer them. This is the
Exactly,
agreement we agreed upon.
exactly. So, I like so I'll say this, I'm 36 right now.
Mhm.
It's taken me until my 30s to really begin to like myself.
Mm.
And in a profoundly deep way, you can interpret that however you wish, but I will tell you that in my teens and 20s, I extremely disliked many aspects of myself.
Mm.
And so that still comes up, especially when I make mistakes and problems in my life or the lives of others. I don't like that. I'm not a person that I look at conflict, whether it's a necessary conflict of there's a problem that needs to be fixed, or whether there's a problem that cannot be fixed. And there are things that are good about conflict. There's the conflict of listening to this versus playing a video game or doing some other listening. So the conflict in the listener's mind is, I want to listen to what Zombie Paper has to say. So that conflict is against the notion of doing some other listening. So there's a conflict, but it's a friendly conflict because I hope you're listening to this. I hope you're getting something out of it. And thank you for listening so far. Um, so that sort of conflict can be very negative in terms of I didn't realize until my 30s that the way that I am most happy is by making stuff and not just consuming the content of others, but say, for example, the next time I watch any Bruce Lee movies, I would want to do that as part of like a watch session with others, so that way we can all enjoy that and have maybe even a discussion about what we thought of the themes, what we thought of the movie. So those sorts of things I would value more than just like I might just randomly pop in a movie, but other outside of that, that happens maybe once a year when I just
Mhm.
casually watch something. It's always got to be for some kind of purpose, some kind of personal growth, some kind of education. Outside of that, yeah, I derive my pleasure from making stuff, and so that I know that is something that I really enjoy having that level of self awareness. I'm still very keenly trying to learn more about myself, including when I annoy people, when people are mad at me, why that's the case, if there's anything I can do to fix that. And if not, just move on from it. Don't let it bother me too much. But those sorts of things, yeah, I like that. I like that I can adapt to situations, that I can take the critique of others, which critique in my mind is not an ad hominem attack of like, oh, I hate the smile, but more of like, oh, so the material that you record, you you say this too often, or you make this kind of linguistic mistake often, that you can fix to improve your recording, or you've made this typo because of this kind of logical problem, go fix that and you'll be good. That sort of thing I like.
Mhm.
Um, as a writer, criticism is something that you must encounter because everyone thinks they know how to write. Everyone thinks they know how to edit. So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I got to listen to this. And if you refute the central argument, that's always when you get the most amount of learning. But when it's just the ad hominem attacks of just like you're a big old dum dum, then it's like, all right, cool.
Thanks. So
Yeah.
helpful.
So yeah, I'd say that's kind of that's the majority of the stuff I like about myself. I like now especially that I'm a lot more willing to get outside my comfort zone, that I can look at a situation and say like if I'm doing something new, then I can feel scared about that. But then I can also look to see why do I feel scared and how can I reduce that fear? How can I go forth with that? And maybe that means I'm scared because I don't feel prepared. And if I don't feel prepared, what do I need to do to get prepared?
Mhm.
Yeah. So those are
Yeah.
some of the things I like about myself. I'm sure there are others, and I'm sure that over the years I'll have more things to add to that. But that's a
I
good
would
short
hope
list.
so. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. I'm glad you have that.
Thank you.
Um, I remember you mentioned something in there that I wanted to ask about, but I forgot, so it's
Mm.
okay. I might stumble upon it later. We'll see.
Otherwise, I don't mind answering offline or online later.
Mhm.
I'm very much, I would say, an open book with one or two private chapters. That's a good summary of how I am, where maybe I don't want to talk about this or that. Maybe I don't want to give my legal name out publicly at this point. But as far as offline stuff, I'm a lot more open to stuff like that. And yeah, there are just a few things I don't want to cover, but that's
Yeah.
just more of logistics. Outside of that, very open.
Alright, fair enough. Um, the next question is, what about yourself inspires you?
That I have the ambition to want to try to do stuff in life. I
Mm.
feel like a lot of folks out there, uh, going back to the writing stuff. So on my website, I've calculated out over the years that I've written must have been something like 2 or 3 million words over the last 6 and a half years.
Mhm.
Which that's a lot. that's that's more than uh, uh, many people. And I don't mean that in a rude way. I don't mean that to like
To brag.
clown on people. Yeah, brag. What I mean is more of like I wanted to do something in the in August of 2016. That's when I started writing. Like I was like, hey, I like this writing stuff more than I like. I was doing a tech support kind of thing at the time, a little project of mine, and I was like, I could do that, but I'm really I don't want to do this like 7 days a week. Not
Mhm.
passionate about it. I could make money with it, but the effort I would put in is not worth it. Versus, hey, I can do writing stuff. I like this, so
Yeah.
I like that. I pretty much was like, yeah, let me go do that. Um, with the understanding that from August of 2016 to today, I have earned $0 and 0 cents of any kind of commission based around any kind of writing. I have received a voucher coupon for doing for sending an essay along to someone that reused it, and I also received maybe a lunch for in exchange for doing this or that. But outside of that, like no livable wage, no
Mhm.
nothing like that, and I think that that would discourage many people because especially like I understand finances. I understand people have a lot of shit to worry about in that regard.
Mhm.
Um, I'm the last person to say, "Oh, do it for free because that's free labor." It's like, no, you should get money out of it, but at the same time, I look at it like, who's going to pay you if you don't want to do it yourself? If you say, "Oh, I want to get paid to play video games." Okay, well, you got to get into QA stuff. Well, I don't want to do any kind of work on that. I just want to get paid. Why do people want to pay you then? Oh, because I want money. Like what?
Mm.
You have to work within the system. So I guess I would say what I like about all that is that I can figure out like, oh, I need to work within this system and this boundary. I can do that. I can do this. I'm not willing to compromise on that. So I believe I've answered your question, but I also feel like I've wandered around a lot.
You
So
have wandered a little bit, but that's okay.
I caught myself self-awareness.
Hey, look at that. +1 with self-awareness.
Heck yeah.
Um, do you wanna move on to the next question?
Go ahead and repeat that question. Make sure I answered everything that seems
What
relevant.
about yourself inspires you?
Oh, yeah, so the inspiration, bit was where I kinda meandered around, so, um, when I look over the essays, I've published, 2,500 and counting. I look at that as like, okay, there's some essays with some words in there that probably are dumb. Probably I wanna change them up, but I'm not gonna really do that because as a whole, that inspires me to think about I've done a lot over these past 6 years that I would hope inspire other people as they've inspired me. So I think that that's kind of the direction. Well, that's kind of the direction I think we should go, where we should be less concerned over the specific minutia of what someone says or what someone writes, and more of the generality of generally what that person means.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, that kind of that's what inspires me to keep on making stuff even when I make a fool out of myself publicly or privately, is just thinking, I've done all this so far. Why would I give up now kind of a thing.
Mhm. Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you wanna move on to the next question?
Yeah. And thanks for letting me salvage that as
No
well, because
problem.
I kind of I kind of was like, "Oh, I've done my thing. I've
It's
tangented."
okay. It happens. Um, how do you react in uncomfortable situations?
So in my 20s, I definitely felt a lot more anxiety. So due to circumstances inside of and outside of my control, I've had to adapt and overcome that. Um, Having learned that, uh, should we talk about like anti-anxiety medication stuff like that, or should we put a little bit of content warning up there just to let people think about it, or should we skip on from that topic?
I think it's fine to talk about it. Is there something that I'm not aware of that would be problematic?
No, nothing problematic. I like to be sensitive about talking about like medication stuff like that. Just as a general sort of mindfulness. Um, we've pretty much covered this on the anxiety podcast
Mhm.
before, but yeah, like but I had an anxiety attack, or what I thought was an anxiety attack. I talked to a psychologist about the material in particular, and it could have been closer to a derealization moment.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
I think I
but
mentioned that in the podcast. Like that sounds more like derealization.
yeah, yeah. So through all of that, I learned like, oh, I have a problem with anxiety, and a lot of that is because of perfectionism.
Mm.
So I would worry about saying the right thing to the right person and getting the right reaction, not out of any kind of control, but just out of to do well. Like even there where it's like, oh, my biological body needs to go burp a little bit, so I'm just gonna roll with it. If it picks up on the mic, then oh well.
It happens.
Indeed, and that's something that I would say that the difference between my 20s, when that was when I received, like, this massive prescription for, Ativan, which is a benzodiazepine, uh,
Mm.
of, like, just a 30-day supply, take all of this, and I just, like, I would take some, like, I had to here's a specific example, I think I mentioned this, but I'll mention it here, I mentioned it on the podcast maybe, but, um, there was a situation at my job where I had a supervisor that was, ripping into me about something or another. It was really kinda dumb what they were doing,
Mhm.
but, yeah, they were ripping into me. I'm using safety pronouns of they, them to protect the guilty and the innocent here. And so after that encounter, I took one of these Ativan. I think it was like a low enough dose to where about 30 minutes later, I started to notice like, wow, I'm feeling a little bit spaced out, but that's not fixing the issue.
Mhm.
It's,
Yeah.
uh, I'm still worried about what's going on here, but I'm feeling a little bit loopier. And this was 5 years into my sobriety from alcohol and cannabis. I celebrate 10 years in April of 2023. So I've
Nice.
already, thank you.
Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a long road, but a lot of that is figuring out that having a when you encounter any kind of emotional problem, you don't want to handle that emotional problem through anything other than the emotional side of it. You
Mhm.
don't want to physically lash out at an emotional problem because that problem is still going to be there and it's probably going to be a lot worse if you do it in that way of say like oh there's this problem with this manager at work so I'm just going to go punch the manager. Like
Mhm.
it's not going to solve the problem unless you want the problem to solve by being fired.
Yeah.
um so yeah, I would say that the difference between the zombie paper of today versus the zombie paper of 6 months ago, 6 years ago, or not 6 decades ago because I'm not 60, is
At the
that
when you were born.
yeah, when I was born, is that so like tomorrow I'm getting outside my comfort zone. I'm doing like a volunteer thing, meeting some new people. I'm doing some new
Fun.
stuff, and that should maybe roll into something more long term. But when I interviewed with the person, like you feel a little bit when you interview over the phone, you want to be on your best behavior, sort of thing. But when you're
Mhm.
doing like a volunteer coordination thing, I just told them I'm looking for work. Uh, and I want to volunteer with you so that way you can be a reference for me as I look for work.
Mm.
And so keeping that context in mind is like saying like if you go into a stressful event of like why am I going to this new volunteer opportunity? Well, I'm doing that because I want to give up 3 hours of my time. And in exchange, that's going to be 3 hours of goodwill applied toward a reference, maybe a potential job, and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
So when I look at like when I'm fearful of something, I think of, well, why am I fearful of it? What am I overlooking? What am I missing? And what can I do differently to maybe say, okay, I'm fearful of this. Well, what why am I fearful of that? Versus 6 years ago when, yeah, like it was about yeah, 6.5 years ago when I had that, all that benzodiazepine. I was like, okay, well, this isn't fixing the problem. This could easily turn into addiction
Mhm.
if I'm not careful.
Mhm.
So um, if it's a physical reaction to a flight or flight reaction within the amygdala of the brain, for me, it would be a good thing to do to take one of those. But if it's like someone's yelling at me because I did a dumb dumb, or that person interpreted my actions as being dumb when I actually, in fact, was not, as A or B, then taking anything like that would just basically make me
Dependent.
dependent on that, or at most, it would just make me kind of loopy for a few hours.
Mhm.
It wasn't even fun.
Oh,
It wasn't even like feeling loopy, like you're just kind of more relaxed. You're just more like,
out of
I
it.
feel loopy and stressed out.
Oh, fun.
But
Ah,
the thing that sobriety definitely has helped me realize is when I encounter anything like that, it's like, oh, I recognize this. I need to make sure to protect myself so I don't do any damage. Is something that sobriety has helped me a lot with. Um, and it's not something that I would encourage for everyone, but I would
mhm,
say that if you feel like I look at it like if you encounter an emotional problem, then alcohol will not fix that. Alcohol will not make that problem go away. All you do is defer the problem or ignore it, and maybe that goes away. But the problem is still going to be there. Just you hide it under a rug, and if you're going to leave that place, then that rug still has that problem. You just left it under the rug. But if you ever got to go back to that place, that rug's still going to be there. That problem's still going to be there. So
mhm.
it's better to get your metaphorical vacuum, lift up that metaphorical rug, clean up under there, and make it all right versus ignoring it. And in my opinion, but that's only for folks that have problems with alcohol. If you don't, then hey,
Cool.
live life.
Good on you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um, I don't know if we got the question answered though.
What was the
So,
question?
how do you react in uncomfortable situations?
I did mostly answer that, but I didn't answer in a direct sort of way.
Yeah, okay.
So
I got a
I
little lost in the weeds.
Yeah, the meandering is something that is a side effect of me being sawing paper, in that I get a little bit I answer indirectly to answer directly. So I
Mhm.
give the context and then I answer, where sometimes I answer through analogy. So now when I encounter problems, like I say, I will look to see like what can I do preemptively. So uh, a stress of going to a new job, like let's say for tomorrow,
Mhm.
let's put the most spin on this in a positive way possible. That this could be a new job for me, that this could be a volunteer to employment opportunity. So that's a stress that pretty much everyone's had. Or if you haven't, you're going to have it because you want to have it. So it's a good stress.
Uh-huh.
You want a job because you want the money from the job and you want the prestige of having the job and you want the prestige of having the reliability. So, what can I do to minimize that stress? Well, I know that the volunteer event starts at roughly X AM. So in order for me to get there, I have to wake up at Y AM, which is a certain point before that so I can get mentally prepared. So these kinds of things that I can build toward my success is how I approach a stressful event. So everything inside of my control, from waking up early, getting enough sleep, having enough food in me, making sure that I arrive early if I have any problems with my car, that I factor enough time for that, that I make sure that I'm mentally prepared, physically prepared, all that kind of stuff. That is all that I can predict. Inside of the moment, let's throw a hypothetical situation out at. So I am told that I will be there to do X kind of volunteer work. But let's
Mhm.
say that when I go there and I arrive, I meet someone that has it out for me for some reason. Like maybe someone that I crossed many years ago that pre sobriety just really hated me for whatever reason is there. Maybe that's my not my manager, but maybe my supervisor or something.
Mhm.
So at that point, fight or flight. You either fly away from the situation or you fight the situation, not by like fight as in you combat that person in battle, but more of you confront that by saying, "Hey, I'm sorry. That was me from a while ago. I was going through some difficulty in my life. I was going through some strife, and that strife landed in your courts by no fault of your own. You were the victim of my stupidity, and I've been trying to work on that in these regards." Um, if you get the opportunity to say all of that, you might not, in which
Mm-hmm.
case you just got to keep your head down and keep on going. So that's how I address stress now. It's just, okay, I got to do this. How am I going to do it?
Mm-hmm.
So that's more direct. Whereas before, I think I was answering indirectly to kind of give maybe some kind of context through which I would explain myself. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, directly, you kind of do it the best you can, and yeah, just if you feel like you need to do something, do it. If you don't, if you feel like you've crossed a bridge that maybe you shouldn't be crossing, then go elsewhere. It's okay.
Okay. Makes sense.
Cool.
Um, let's see. The next question is, when was the last time you were validated?
Hmm. That's a tricky question. Um, let's see. So I guess I would say the validation from Cecily when I have pretty much an arrangement when it comes to reviewing music of people that I know, friends or acquaintances, where I will write my thoughts out honestly without any kind of um, like I'll think in terms of like I don't want to say anything stupid that offends my friends, of
Mm-hmm.
course, but what I'll do is I'll say like, hey, I I'm the maybe the last person that appreciates surprises. If you want to offend me, try to surprise me in a way that you think is positive. So I don't like birthday gifts. I don't like um, surprise parties um, because those are burdens. Frankly, they're burdens in my mind. So I don't like these things. So if that is my perspective of reality, I would safely assume that if I'm talking about a musician, the last thing that a musician would want to do is read a review in 6 months where I say something stupid. So when I sent that along to Cecily, let me go ahead and take a quick look over. I'm not going to say what she all wrote, but
Mm-hmm.
in summary, she said, "I love reading this stuff." As in, like we share similar mentality in how we think and how we interpret media. So it's very much like seeing that is a very enjoyable thing. So I would say that that is validation in terms of validating what I wrote as received well.
Mm-hmm.
And for a review like that, like I have to go the distance in terms of thinking about the parasocial relationships that we have between musicians and fans. As a reviewer, that's a conduit through which I can experience both sides of that perspective and how I can report on that. And so that Cecily read it, understood it, and then provide validation um, was really cool. Outside of that, I would say like collaborating on the podcast with Bella Beluga and Itty that we both we three we both as in they kind of together we all like the direction we're going with the podcast now. We all like how we're planning things. So we provide validation for each other that there are no red flags, there are no kind of like, hey, you did something kind of not so cool there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's kind of the validation that I like in terms of professional environments. And well, a trick question or trick answer here too, Silverstorm. I bet you're not going to see this one coming, but
Uh-oh.
you've been validating me throughout this entire thing by saying good answers. And when when I miss the mark, rather than just kind of like assuming that I'm just a big old dum dum, you're just like, I think we should try to answer that again. Like, oh, okay, oops.
Well, I'm glad I could do that for you.
Yeah, so you've been validating me throughout this entire recording. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for saying that. It's really sweet.
Yeah.
Do you want to move on to the next one?
Let's see if there's anything else that I need to think about in terms of validation.
Okay.
So, I like to be self-aware when I do recordings,
Mm-hmm.
and so part of that includes acknowledging the audience. I like to do that, kind of the colloquialism of the semi-interactivity part of it. But I like to acknowledge that the audience listening in the future might also be validating me as well privately. um, the audience may be thinking, "Yeah, you're saying some really cool stuff," or "You were going off on a weird tangent there, but I kind of got your drift," that sort of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine that the audience would validate both me and you through this kind of situation, and so yeah, I bet that they're validating us as well
Yeah, probably. In their
through
own
time
ways.
travel. Yeah.
By watching the finished product.
Yeah, that's what I mean by time travel, is that they could be watching in, I don't know, 3022, and 1,000 years from now, they could be watching this,
Oh
and
gosh.
I'm very excited by that notion that people could still gain value from material. I mean, like, kinda going back to the idea with, Bruce Lee and Jimi Hendrix, like, their material is gonna last forever. They're people that change reality in a fundamentally positive way, and so if there's anything I can do to kinda help people, even 1% of that, then I will have led a good life.
That's awesome. I'm glad you have that.
Yeah. So I look optimistically toward that. I think, like, yeah, I might embarrass myself here and there, but overall, if I tried. When I failed, then it's about picking yourself back up again.
Yeah, yeah. What are you drawing down here?
I'm currently drawing a flag. I'm not sure why I'm drawing the flag, but now I'm drawing the background for the flag, like the scenic mountaintop is where I'm kind of thinking I might go in. But
Mm.
that's kind of my plan for right now, is doing something like that. Just because I don't need to draw an example. I don't need to draw like a brain that turned into a flower or a book or write the names of people. So yeah, I'm just kind of chilling on that idea.
Okay, cool. Um, do you want to move on to the next question?
Sure.
That was validation. Okay, here's a tricky one.
Mm,
Who are you?
who am I? I'm zombie paper.
Do you want to explain more on what zombie paper is? On
So
who zombie paper is?
so zombie paper is many things to many people. Um, I am. How do I phrase this best? Well, we can go back to this idea of, for some people, I'm a podcaster. For some people, I'm an artist. Some people, I'm a video game enthusiast. Some people, I'm a writer. Some people know me online through any kind of other means, and some people know me offline through other kind of means. So, through this 6 point lens, we can see that I am a multifaceted individual, um, and it's always interesting when friends of mine meet each other through other means. And what I mean
Mm.
by that is, in Cecily's Discord, I met someone through another community that I'm in, and the three of us were like, "Oh yeah, that place." So that place is Endless War. I discourage people from looking too much into that, not out of any kind of shame, but just because it's a really weird place. It's like it's a
It's for a particular group of people.
yeah, it's like that place has really helped me develop my sense of autonomy through conflict, where you have a war situation basically. So you're always combating over ideas or ideologies. You always have your perspectives. So it's really a good place to figure out who you are and what you're about. The reason why I'm the artist that I am today is because of Endless War. So I have them to thank about that. But I would encourage, if you're interested, to peruse the material before you join the Discord. Like, think about what you're getting into before you jump right in. But that being said, that's not a side of myself I feel shame about, and that's something that when Cecily and this other person joined Cecily's Discord and was like, "Oh, hey, you're from Endless War." Like,
I know you.
I know you. You did a cool thing in Endless War that a lot of people appreciate, and yet the person's like, let's not talk about this too much." Like, yeah, you're right on that. So then later on, someone was like, "Oh, what's that all about?" I was like, don't go."
um, yeah.
So yeah, like, I am many things to many people, which is the central point of confusion for a lot of people, which is why I fixated so much on that 6 point analogy very early on, because when people look at I think I'd say this is a truism where a lot of people only want to think of one aspect of a person, of, like, say, Bruce Lee. Perfect example. Bruce Lee is a martial artist philosopher, which is already a dichotomy of two different extremes of the brains and the bronze.
Mhm.
You don't often think of someone that can do both. You often think like, oh, like a RPG skill set. You boosted your stats into both. Like, you cheated. Like,
Mhm.
uh, uh,
You cross-classed.
you cross classed, yeah, in a way that it's like, you're weak at. You should be weak at both, but you're not. What? How come you
How does that
cheated?
work? That's not how it works.
So yeah, like, a lot of people, I would say, are. So this is going to be a little, like, don't take this the wrong way, audience and Silverstorm, but I feel like a lot of people are closed minded to the idea of people doing more than one thing or being more than one side.
Mm,
We want a lot of things to be easy. We want to think of that is the bad person, that is the good person, that is the person we can watch, and a lot of it is honestly the manufactured reality of a lot of advertising departments and a lot of marketers and a lot of your kind of representatives that clean you up and say like, "Oh, you can't release a record with that lyrical content. So let's go
mm,
ahead and clean that up for mass production."
mhm.
So you have
I
that kind of thing.
Here's a little bit of a tangent, but I
Mm,
think it applies to what you're talking about. There is a term that I learned in my social psych class called cognitive miser. Do you know
mm.
what that is?
Not offhand, but I'm gonna go ahead and do a little bit of reading while you talk about it.
Okay,
Social
so
miser.
cognitive.
Oh, cognitive.
Cognitive miser. So what the
Miser.
idea basically is that our brains are cognitive misers. And miser as in like reserving resources. Our
Mm,
brain at any point in time is constantly trying to preserve as much resources as possible, and the
mm,
resources is energy. It takes a lot of energy to consider another person and to consider their point of view and a different point and a different side to the story. And so that's
mm,
why like a lot of people have snap decisions like you were talking about of just like putting people in boxes and making things easier for themselves because it takes a lot of energy to consider people and what they're going through and who they are, actually who they are. It takes a lot of energy and our brain doesn't like it. So it makes it easier for us to function if we can just put people in boxes because then we can then continue with the rest of our lives and not have to worry about considering the wholeness of this person.
Yeah, I can see that. The definition of a miser is a person who hoards wealth and spends as little money as possible. Applied
Mhm.
psychologically would be mising energy
Mhm.
and cognitive side of it. Yeah, I could see all that applying outward. Oh, in psychology, here's what Wikipedia says on my side. In psychology, the human mind is considered to be a cognitive miser due to the tendency of humans to think and solve problems in simpler and less effortful ways rather than in more sophisticated and effortful ways, regardless of intelligence. So, what you just said, but I was just reading the entry there.
Mhm.
And I could see that. I can definitely see that it is easier to say, for example, have someone tell you, oh, well, what I told you about Bruce Lee or Jimi Hendrix.
Mhm.
You have a quote trusted unquote perspective on that because I've done some study and some research, so you can trust that maybe I don't know everything about either person, but I know a little bit about them enough to respect them. So
Yeah.
there is that. Whereas I don't know too much about like any kind of negative sides of them. I don't know like if they did any kind of major crime, and frankly, that's not um, something that when I look at like Wikipedia articles, for example, if there's like a big controversy section of like crimes and stuff, I'll be like, oh, oops, I shouldn't be hanging out with that person in my mind. But outside of that, it's like everyone does some stupid stuff over their lives. So what do you focus on there? So I would say that yeah, as far as cognitive misering, that there is the notion where it is easier just to think like, oh yeah, um, let's take this person and reduce that person down to the basics and say like, oh, I don't like this person's music because of this or that, so that person's a bad poo poo head. Well, there's a lot more to life than just that, but yeah, good term, good thinking. Thanks for the thinking there.
No problem. It's something to consider, and unfortunately, even considering that you might be a cognitive miser takes energy. So you're screwed
Yeah,
either way. There's no fixing it.
I think of it as better to know that there's a problem and to meander toward a solution than to not be aware of it, because I know there are parts of myself that like want meandering, long-witted answers or just something that I know that I do.
Mhm.
Um, I was told maybe 15, 20 years ago that I did that a lot. And so I've done some practice and some training against that, or to fix that, I should say, not against that. Where I realized the person told me you talk too much. So I was like, oh,
Mm.
how can I fix that? Well, the talking too much was just not letting other people talk.
Mm.
So now I'm a lot more open to being interrupted and just going with the flow. So
Mm.
uh, yeah, I'd say like that would be the downside of having your mind open to the ideas that you have to change a bunch of stuff means now you got to worry about a bunch of stuff. Well,
Yep.
I don't know. I think worrying is as long as you don't overdo it, I think that it's good to think about like, am I saying something that I might regret in 20 years?
For
Right now,
sure.
I don't think so.
For sure. You gotta have some kindness for yourself.
Yeah, and that's something too that I think we learn as broadcasters, where we do so much stuff live impromptu that we're going to make mistakes. And my thing is, if I'm watching this as a outward audience member, if I don't know anything about Zombiepaper and I'm watching, I'm like, wow, that person's really dumb, then maybe I don't do a lot of what I do. But if I, especially when I write, it's like, okay, I'm going to assume my audience, like they always talk about, like, who do you write for? Well, I write for an open, anonymous individual of no particularity that would be able to read, maybe not understand every single thing that you know. You pull a random term out of the dictionary, a $5 word. That person's not going to know that. I'm not going to know that. So have an empathetic writing style and just assume that generally people are going to be okay with saying things unless they're controversial, in which case you give context of why you said that. And I think most people would be like, yeah, I don't agree with you, but that makes sense. So I'll be okay
Probably.
with that.
All right. Do you want to move on to the next question?
Yeah.
All right. Outside of race, gender, and career, how would you describe yourself?
As zombie pepper.
I figured that that would be your answer. I
Haha.
That's okay. I'll accept it. But I want to say that I really liked. Do you still have that slogan in Discord where you are a square entity in a round world?
Oh yes, that was my old bit. Cause yeah, that definitely describes who I am as a person. Let me go dig that up here. I have the quote somewhere. Yeah, I can't find it offhand, but yeah, I'm basically in a circular world. This could be a good drawing bit here. So in a circular world, let's go ahead and I lost the how do I do oh there we go. Cool. So in a not that in a circular world, I am a square, which means that I do not fit in many places. Um, which was part of the what I don't like about myself in my 20s answer,
Mm,
was because I was in a world of circles. I was in groups of circles, and here I am a square. I don't fit in at all. So I could do things like go into communities where there are larger circles and I'm a smaller square, so I can fit, right? Like in this
mm-hmm,
example here, if all of these circles need to be X size, then I can fit in because I'm a small little square. So cool, I fit. But only through realizing that the reason why I don't fit in is because I am trying to do things that don't match. I'm trying to get into game development when I'm a writer.
mm,
Those can match up, but that's basically getting into a space where I can fit in a little bit more, but they talk about Unity, they talk about Unreal, they talk about programming, they talk about GitHub, whereas I talk about linguistics and analysis of reality. So
mm-hmm,
there is some overlap to be clear, and especially games writing. You think like, "Oh, well, that's the example, but that's just a smaller square or circle that fits in closer to that which is me, but there's still bits where I have to fold in and I have to do all that. So the thing that I'm looking for now is I'm just doing my own thing. I'm living my own life. I'm doing art when I feel like it, kind of going back over here, doing art when I feel like it, podcasting, video games, writing whenever I feel like it. And the people that vibe with me, the people that empathize and say, I don't get it fully, but I get it enough to agree with you,
mm-hmm.
then those are the people that I like to hang out with. So yeah, I would say a lot of my misery in life was trying to chase after finding people that I just couldn't relate with anyway, but needed to by way of having a sort of
Social network.
social network or social requirement to do that. So I feel really heckin' jealous for all the people now that can just go in and have communities,
Mm,
build out
mm-hmm.
communities without any kind of need to be like, yeah, I'm in a small town and I got to be friends with everyone. And I was definitely the outcast. I'll go ahead and be on the record on that, as I have been many times. I was the outcast. I was the punching bag, metaphorically and physically, of a lot of my childhood.
Mm.
So when people talk about nostalgia and oh, wasn't it so great in the '90s? Fucking
Yeah.
sucked for me.
So I don't know what you're talking about. I cannot relate.
I cannot relate. I feel a profound sense of positivity when I go, like, even go to Endless War. Like I go there to have fun, to make fun of people sometimes, to release some of my stress when I need to by arguing with people there,
Mhm.
because that's a safe environment for arguing. Where I make the joke that in other places I'm probably this big terrible person, but in Endless War I'm this small little square. And that was honestly the first community, a big community where I was accepted for who I was and not needing to kowtow to anyone else, not needing to be performative to any other aspect. That you accept the rules of engagement, that this is a very vulgar place and this is not a place for I don't know.
For people who get their hurt feelings hurt easily.
Yeah, like people are gonna make fun of you. Okay, cool. You make fun of them back and you laugh about it.
Mhm.
If that's too big for you, then
Not for
okay,
you.
not for you. And that's why I always give that caveat, because I don't know if people are squares like me. I don't know if they're circles like others. I don't know if they're rhombi. I don't know
Triangles.
triangles. But I just know that whatever community I fit into, I know I fit in best when there are other people, not just squares, not just circles, not just triangles. When I can meet people from all different perspectives. I find that those diverse environments are the most inclusive for me, whereas the ones where squares only or circles only, I don't fit in very well.
Mm.
So
I'm
I
glad
guess
you
those,
found that space.
thank you. And I guess to some degree that is an analogy through which I would say that people that are of my particular biological makeup or any kind of social construct perspective, that that is to say that I might fit in, but I tend to fit in when I am not the only person like myself in that environment. So
Mm.
to use a further analogy, I like being the only square in an environment that is inclusive to all shapes, because then I can look to see like, hey, you're a triangle, but
You've
we
got
have side.
points. You've
Yeah,
got sharp
you
sides.
I liked your pun there. You got points there. Me too.
You've got points. I just got one less than you. You have more
Yeah,
than I do.
yeah. So that's who I am. I'm someone that I like the idea of bouncing around from community to community. I don't hide from any community. I don't pretend to be anyone else. I'm Zombiepaper wherever I am.
Mhm.
The avatar I use right now, the Earthbound enemy that's on fire with the Zombiepaper face in front of that, that's how I present myself in Z Discord, in Cecily's server, Endless War, your server, Silver Storm. I'm in there
Yep.
too.
You are in
And
there.
wherever I'm not welcome, hey, there's a reason for that, and I don't dig into it. I don't judge. It just all right. That's not my server list anymore. All right, there's a reason for that. Whatever. Move on.
Mhm. I have a question. It isn't
Mm.
a listed question, so I hope it's not too much of a surprise.
Lizard question?
Listed.
Oh,
I have a
listed.
list of questions, and this is
Ah,
not on that list.
you didn't send me the list, so they're all
That
unlisted to
is
me.
true. But yeah, no. Whatever. Anyway, um I wanted to ask because I last time I asked this, I really liked your explanation, so I kind of want it here in our little podcast interview. Is like, why a square? Why zombie paper?
So the how do I phrase this? So the uh, I have all the information. I just need to know how to phrase this well. The logistics of the answer is that when I was doing the game development stuff, this was volunteering. Actually, the anniversary of me drawing the face was 4 years ago in October. Um,
Nice.
So it was for I was part of a team, and they were like, "Hey, you gotta have like an avatar or something, so you can be part of the team, so we
Mhm.
know who you are."
Easy to
uh,
recognize.
easy to recognize. So, and this is also for like a professional networking thing as well. A lot of people get jobs through that.
Mhm.
There's a lot of that sort of thing. So, ostensibly, that would be my professional image, right? That's like
Mhm.
equivalent to someone taking a photo of you and putting it up uh, on on your LinkedIn. But this is for Discord we were using. So they're like, you got to have an avatar. So I open up Paint and I put I'll show it on my side. You won't be able to see it just yet, but basically open up Paint. I was like, what colors do I like? I like the green, the lime green, the B5E63D green. So let me throw that in there. And the other green, I like that too. So I don't want to do this. I want to go like about halfway and have like a brush. So do something like that. And then I drew the left eye, the face, then the right eye. So I was like, there you go. There's the face. There, that's me. So that was forged out of many decades of assessing myself. So that's your short answer is the logistical answer. But do you want the more metaphorical answer?
Yes.
Okay, so let me get some water here first.
Okay.
So I'm zombie paper, but the zombie paper of the year 2000 was significantly different. I went by the name Insignificant Entity at that time. And so that idea is the notion that the work that I do or the comments that I make is the secondary proponent or the secondary aspect of the primary, which is what I'm saying or what's happening here. So you listen to this podcast and who I am is irrelevant compared to what I'm saying. Um, there's a lot of in for to say what I'm saying is informed through a lifetime of experience, but to have that kind of fundamental perspective of like, don't focus so much on me, focus on what I'm saying, was that aspect of insignificant entity. Now, cut to 2008, where I tried to join Rate Your Music, and they said, oh, we need at least 3 letters for our usernames because I was going by IE. So
Mm.
then I went with, okay, what's a longer version of IE in a different context? So zombie paper. So that was just a random junk word that I picked out of a hat, basically. Um, it's from Earthbound. Um, it's a plot point for those that haven't played it. It's a plot point for those that have played it. It's kind of a funny inside joke for folks. Like people are like, "Oh, zombie paper from Earthbound, right?" It's also a funny thing too when people argue. Like I experienced this one bit a while ago where someone was like, "Oh, Earthbound fans are so annoying." When I was in the audience, I was like,
Mhm.
"So have you played Earthbound?" No, but it's really annoying. Like,
Oh.
so you don't know that my name is from Earthbound? Okay. Okay, so you don't know a whole lot about this game that you're complaining about. I know a lot about you. So that became a whole thing though around the time of that 2008 making the face, making the name. I was like, since I'd had the username Song Paper for about 10 years by that point, but I hadn't really stuck with it until the game developed. And I was like, that's a good enough name. I'm fine with that. I had registered my website with which has zombie in the name. So I guess 2016 I was feeling good with it, but not comfortable. Like now, um, when I met my friend Kip through Endless War, they moved out from wherever they lived before. I'm not going to say it because they're not here, but they moved out here. They're fine with me saying stuff like that. That it's like, well, we met up, like, they know me as Zombie Paper, but when I met the roommate, I was like, "Oh, I'm legal name redacted." Like, I'm not gonna be weird,
Mm. Mhm.
but ideally, I'm Zombie Paper. I'm not legal name redacted. That's not who I am. I'm only that for the government and for employment. Outside of that, who I am as Zombie Paper or Zombie or ZP or whatever you want to call me, variant on that. But I'm not, if you call me legal name redacted with the actual name, I'll be like, who are you?
Where did you get that?
Well, not that. I mean, you could probably figure it out. I'm not
uh,
super private about it, but at the same time, it's like, you're not my friend. You're not someone I've known for 20 years that's okay with you calling me that. So you're obviously a narc. what what do you want from me?
what do you want?
Yeah, you want my money? Well, no. So yeah, I think that that's about the. I think that's a lot of the highlights of that story about how he came up with the etymology of the name and the my whole ideology. I guess you'd say. I guess that's fair to say, but
Okay. Yeah.
um, kind of tricky though. There's, I mean, how deeply down the rabbit hole does one want to get with stuff like that?
Well, for sake of time, let's move on from here.
Yeah.
Because we still got a couple more questions to go through. But I
Oh
think you
yeah.
answered that question well enough, so thank you.
Cool. Hmm.
Okay, next question is what is something that scares you?
You never say stuff like that. You don't know who's watching this. You don't know who's listening to this.
Why not?
Well, then they know what to take advantage of you about.
But you're aware of it, so you know what to look out for.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a past example of something I have overcome, so that way I'm not worried about it now, because I
Sure.
think that's the more of the spirit of it. Um, I was scared about being misunderstood.
Mm.
That was something I was very worried about. Um, Now I realize more of the context that I'll always be misunderstood. You'll always be misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
There is nothing in reality that is more reliable than being misunderstood. That's all of communication is trying to understand someone through misunderstanding and asking for clarification. If it is harmful, then obviously that's not really too cool to be like, oh yeah, I accept that this slander is being used against me. Now, that's something that I've learned through hardship of just realizing that that's going to happen anyway. That's going to be just a truism where you say like, "Oh, I like the color green." Then someone's going to be like, "Oh, so that means you hate the color red." Like,
No.
no.
I just like the color green, man.
That's not how it goes, but if that person feels so adamant about that to where it's like they feel that me liking the color green is problematic for them as a red color enjoyer, well, it almost is better that they feel that way about me and hate me for enjoying the color green in that context because for one, it saves the time of us not having to communicate about maybe more business stuff or maybe more nuanced conversation. Just more like, okay, we're not going to see eye to eye. We're not going to agree. We can't even agree to disagree. There's no real point in interacting with this person at this time. Maybe later on, but for the moment, hey, you just feel that way, so that's okay. I accept that. So that was certainly a fear of mine for a long time of thinking like, oh, what if people misunderstand me? Well, if there is slander, that is against the law. You can't slander people online. You can't provide libel online. So the material that if someone is out there saying, "Hey, Zombie Paper is an asshole," then is that slanderous or is that accurate? And probably there's some slander in there, so probably that's not too cool. And every once in a while, you see examples of, as a random example, Steve Wallace is this YouTuber that does camping videos, very innocent videos, just like him hanging out, going places to camp,
Mm-hmm.
but he's got some haters for whatever reason, probably because he's got like 1.1 million followers on YouTube. So
Yeah. Jealous of the
he,
success.
yeah, so in his most recent video, he talked about how he had to hire a private investigator out of like the Swedish, Norwegian, Scandinavian area
Mhm.
to go shut down some libelous material that was happening out of that part of the world.
Mhm.
And he was like, special thanks to these folks that helped avoid having me go out to Sweden to stop this from happening. And it was just like, if it could happen to Steve Wallace, that could sure as heck happen to me.
Mhm.
So, whatever misunderstanding people have, you got to think like, is it something that is accurate? Where hears me say, "I like the color green," and that person picks up, "Oh, that zombie paper likes the color green." That means that green is zombie paper's favorite color. Cool. If that is taken out of context, that could be because of the aforementioned red example or whatever kind of analogies in that person's head. That would be inaccurate to the point where it's like, I can't fix that person's perspective on that because that person is going to find something else where maybe I say I like the band Nirvana. Oh, that's problematic. You don't like Soundgarden more? You're problematic. Like,
You're the
what do you
reason
want from me?
you're the reason the world's wrong. You don't like Soundgarden. Grr.
Yeah, which I have seen them. I did get to see them, so
Cool.
I had a good enough time there, but they weren't my favorite band, so that canceled for that.
Wow. Saying the truth over here.
Yeah, so that's why I'd say is that yeah, like kind of if what is worse is it's like, oh, did you hear about Zombie Paper not liking Soundgarden? So that's cancels Zombie Paper about that kind of thing. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, if you're not willing to talk with me about that, if you're willing to have your own perspective on that, then what's my what's my factor in this? What do I do about this? And if those people aren't willing to talk to me about Soundgarden, then hey, it's none of
I
my
guess,
business.
yeah, can't do anything about it.
Because I can't change everyone's mind. I can't convince everyone that I like Nirvana more than Soundgarden.
Uh, all right. Well, thank you. I think that
Hmm.
answers that question. Would you like to move on?
Oh, certainly, yeah.
Okay. The next question is, oh, hold on. I gotta find my mouse. Oh, no. There's my mouse. I found it.
Yay!
Um, what is the hardest thing you've ever had to overcome?
Becoming zombie paper.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How so?
because it took a lot of self-interrogation for me to realize that I was fundamentally unhappy with my life about 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the question of why. Why am I unhappy with myself? What is different about the me that I should be and the me that I am to where I'm so fundamentally unhappy with life? And so I wrote about this very early into my writing. But to summarize briefly, I was very unhappy at a job I was working at. I was feeling this was after my derealization moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so getting back into reality again, I was like, oh, I don't like, I'm stressed out about the job because I actually don't like it. So then it's like, okay, what do I do to fix this? Well, by chance, I happened to do a float tank session. And so I'll go ahead and answer that for those in the audience that don't know what float tanks are.
Float tanks are cool. They're
Have you been in
neat.
one?
I want to be in one, but I haven't.
They are they're among the most fundamentally positive experiences I've ever had in my entire life. I credit float tanks for being who I am today. Without any kind of float tank, which I'll describe in a minute, I would definitely be a lot different of a person. I'd be a lot more negative of a person. I would be a lot less good of a person. So, what float tanks are, were they were originally designed by John C. Lilly as a way to assess the nature of the reactions of people to chemicals, but not just chemicals, but just life, to go into a sensory deprivation chamber and to experience life without any kind of external factor, to just be one with yourself, be one with your mind. And so, an environment like that is very challenging for a lot of people that cannot be alone with themselves, cannot think. Like, if you have trouble meditating, if you have trouble turning off all the lights and just thinking about, like, how is it going today? If your
Mm,
mind immediately is combative with you, then uh, you have a lot more. You might not have a good time with the float tank. You might need to talk to a professional about that, or maybe that would be a good time where if you say like, "Oh, I feel very combative against myself. I don't trust myself," then a float tank might help you with that. But you have to be willing to accept what your brain tells you about yourself, and you have to say, "Oh, I accept that," or "I don't." So, the float tank helped me realize that I was doing the kind of career IT goonery where you go into a job, you do the best you can, you basically high score all your stats, you put in your 40 hours worth of work, and you do whatever you need to do to succeed. You get your promotions, and I was
mhm,
extremely miserable. I was like, I'd been doing that. I'd been chasing that my whole life because I was told, "Hey, you got to have a good job. You got to have this and that." So
mhm,
I did, and on the outside I was successful, but on the inside I was very miserable. So the float tank session I did, I had worked my way up to doing. So they're normally 1 hour sessions. They're kind of pricey, and that's why I say, like, do your research, figure out if you want to do it, because you're dropping some money to do this.
mhm.
But
They are
there are,
expensive,
yeah, but
but I find
there
them very cool.
yeah, I've put in maybe 40, 50 hours into float tanks. So
Wow. Nice.
yeah,
I'm
they're
glad
they're
that you've gotten some use out of it.
and I will say that as far as right now, they're considered in the American healthcare system to be an alternative medicine not covered by insurance.
Mhm,
But there are many corporations and nonprofits. I heard about a nonprofit recently that are trying to figure out ways to make float tanks more accessible as a medication for stuff like anxiety. So you
mhm,
might be written a prescription for a float tank versus going to taking a medication for like benzodiazepines. Like stuff like that, I think is a very positive thing. But you got to know what you're getting into, and a lot of the media is like, "Oh, float tanks are really weird and quirky and dangerous." Like, no, no, there's a
nah.
lot of misinformation out there about that. So, yeah, to go back on topic for a moment here, I did a 4-hour float tank, um, which for those at home that maybe aren't keeping track, 1 hour is pretty in depth. You get kind of surface level analysis going. Uh, if you book them in a certain way, like the place I go to, they're pretty much like, if you double, triple book like that, if you go like one after the other, they'll give you the time in between for free. And so they're like, "You want to do a 4 hour one?" I was like, "Shoot, yeah,
Sure,
let's
why
do it."
not?
Yeah. So it was like four for the price of three, basically, kind of thing. So I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." So the the way that this float session took place was, in the first 5 minutes I realized I hate my job, I got to quit. So
Mhm,
that is the impetus for the rest of the session, which is, how do I quit my job? How do I survive? What do I do? And that interrogation of myself and my mind to figure out, what kind of resources do I need to figure out? Who do I contact? What kind of things do I need to sort through? Got me on the path of going into a different direction with my career, which ended up working out very well for me up until becoming disabled. And now that I'm basically getting to the point where I can work again,
Which I'm really
I'm
glad to
gonna
hear about.
thank you. Yeah, that was a long, arduous process that is not related to the answer here, but what is related is that, yeah, I deeply disliked myself up until realizing that the reason why I did was because I was chasing after a version of myself that is not authentic to myself. So if I
Mm.
can impart any kind of general kind of wisdom to anyone, it's that if you don't like what you're doing in life and you don't like yourself, maybe it's just because you're wearing a different set of clothing. Maybe you're putting on a different hat than maybe you feel comfortable with. Maybe instead of doing, like for me, maybe instead of doing long-term IT work at a company that I don't like, maybe try to work somewhere I do like. Or if I have no choice in where I work, then go work there. But in the back of your head, think, what do I want to work on? Which for me is the podcasting, the art, the video games, writing, and other stuff. So that's kind of like what I've learned to like about myself over years of disliking myself. If that, I think that mostly answers the question.
I think so too. So the hardest thing you had to go through was, yeah, figuring out, yeah, figuring out that kind of stuff of like what
Figuring
you
out
want
what
to
I
do.
disliked. Yeah,
Yeah.
figuring out what I disliked about myself and why, and having the courage to fix that.
Yeah, that is pretty hard. I'm glad you were able to do that.
Thank you.
Um, the next question is, what frustrates you the most about life?
Hmm. So this will be a slightly political answer.
Okay.
Um, so content warning on that for politics.
Uh-huh.
I'm frustrated by the notion that we can't work together, but instead actively work against each other for a lot of things that I feel should be fairly standardized in that uh, I live in the United States. I live in perhaps the most industrialized and perhaps the best country in the world, and yet in my part of the world, in the greater Seattle area, we have a large homeless population.
Mhm.
Now, having talked to homeless people and having interacted with them, um, they are not a monolith. Um, I think that in general, I feel like being homeless should not be a choice, or should be a choice. Sorry. This is where the pedantry involved with politics is very precise. You have to be razor sharp for a lot of this. And I feel that's the major problem. Um, I feel like if you want to be homeless because I met a Unix admin that was just like, yeah, I don't want to be part of that rat race. Okay,
Okay.
cool. Like
That's yeah, that's your prerogative.
yeah, I validate you as a human being. I respect that you have this choice. Uh, I can't give you a lot of money. I can't give you a lot of food, but I respect you. And if you're going, at the time, this person was living at Gasworks Park in Seattle, Washington. So if the person was able to get by, okay, what can I do to help with a little bit of effort? Listen to your story. Okay, cool. I can do that. Um, but I feel it is a fundamental failure of America to have people that are homeless, to have resources that are available, and yet not be able to ensure that all people that want to be homed are capable of being homed, that we have to worry about getting a job. That should just be something that we all can do. As far as getting a good job, I mean, hey, that's going to take some work and time. But if I want to go out there and get a job and it takes me months and months, I
That's a
see that
little
as a
bit of a problem.
that's a little bit of a problem. And so that's where I say that from a political perspective, I'm very annoyed when I hear certain perspectives that say that no, that's actually a really good thing. Like,
Um, okay.
okay, that's how you think.
That's
Okay,
a
fine.
interesting point of view. Okay.
Yeah. So that's where I tend not to engage with people politically like that,
Mhm.
because there are many people that feel like that I'm wrong. That many
Yeah.
people that feel like no, they deserve that, or it's like I wish that nothing like that ever happens to you. Not in any kind of mean way, but just like as soon as you experience any degree of, hey, I could be homeless. I
It's
don't like that.
terrifying.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. So
it's absolutely terrifying.
yeah, so yeah, definitely. I think a lot of that is from a position of privilege to say, oh yeah, those people over there are homeless. That's their problem. That's they got into it, or like you hear about like people saying like, oh, it's because of drugs and alcohol. Well, that's another thing that frustrates me too is that alcoholism and drug addiction are two of the only things out there that we don't treat in the ways of saying like cancer or something. I got to get some water.
Mhm.
There we go. I'm back.
Cool. Well, I'll go
So
back.
thank you. Yeah, I just my throat acts up sometimes like that. So yeah, the idea of like I've been sober for nearly 10 years now. Um, if I were to say, "Oh yeah, I've been in remission from cancer for nearly 10 years,"
That's celebration. People celebrate.
yeah, when you talk about sobriety, people hesitantly celebrate, but there's also that tinge of regret. There's also that tinge of like, "Were you a fucking asshole?" Yeah, I was, kind of a thing.
Mhm.
Um, so a lot of addiction counselors just outsource everything to AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, or NA, Narcotics Anonymous.
Mhm.
Those aren't those aren't the same thing as having professional help from professionals. Those are just people talking about like, yeah, my day was really rough, and so I wanted to get a drink, and now I realize that uh, that affected my life, and I need to change that. I don't know what to do. Stuff like that.
Mhm.
Um, that we have a negative stigma against addiction so much that we don't see it as what it is, which is a medical problem, whatever that may be, whether it's a gene for addiction, whether that's a comorbidity with ADHD. I was looking a little bit into that. The Mayo Clinic says that there is not much of a relation, as in there is not a one for one, but there could be some correlation. So for me, a fundamental frustration is that as an addict, when I hear people talking about drinking or smoking cannabis or doing whatever, it's like I can't engage with that because I know the risks of my own self. And yet other people are like, smoke weed every day. It's like,
Mm.
um,
It's hard to engage with.
yeah, you can't engage with that too well as an addict. And I try to respect people as best I can. I make fun of people sometimes too, and people are talking about like 420. It's like, what happens then?
Yeah.
Like just silly stuff like that. But it frustrates me that that we have a war on drugs,
And the
but
drugs
we
are
also
winning.
the drugs are winning. The pharmaceutical companies are pushing a harmful dichotomy where I talked to this was in late 2020. I was talking to a nurse that was saying that their son had just gotten out of surgery and they were not the son was not given any pain medication for like a I think it was like a tooth operation.
Mhm.
And it was one of these like, what the hell? That's the one time where he would be given that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But because of the nature of like, oh, all pain medication is harmful, so we can't give you any pain medication. And there's some doctors that are just like, here's a 30-day supply, shut up and get out of here.
Mhm.
um, that sort of opposite end of the spectrum, that we don't have the kind of notion of like, hey, you're given this prescription, here is also an addiction counselor to just talk, just to like have a conversation,
Mhm.
talk about like how many do you take today, how many do you take yesterday, how many do you have left.
Yeah.
So to notice anything like that, when I was going through a lot of my disability, was a lot of really intense pain for 2 years, over 2 years. I had to manage that. I had to learn I can't get hooked on anything because it's not going to be available at the local store. I can't
Yeah.
go buy any of this. So
Yeah, that's tough.
I feel like that's a fundamental failure of the American society that should be the best. I was going to say company, the best company in the world, the best country in the world, where if we figured out how to take care of our people from housing, food, addiction, and all of that, then hell yeah, we'd be the best company in the world, best country in the world.
We're getting there. We're
we're
getting
we're
there.
trying,
We're
we're
trying.
trying, but yeah, I see that as something that I understand people want to save their money and be lean on taxes. I understand all of that notion,
It
but
is
it's like,
frustrating. Yeah.
yeah, because there's probably a lot of tax bloat and all that, and I
Mhm.
don't know enough political theory or political science to know what to do to fix it. But I think that having even a conversation like this to talk about where are the stress points and to say that then can enable us to think of, yeah, we could probably work on that a little bit more. And that's kind of why I encourage people to look to see how can you donate to resources in the area of like if you have a lot of food, where's your local food bank? Can you
Mm.
drop off food? Because I know I went to a food bank a few years ago and there's a lot of like they had a lot of fresh baked bread or
Mm.
like the days old bread kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's like
Mhm.
it was one of those things where you think about like a lot of us are 1 or 2 steps away from that, and how can
Yeah.
we help with that? I think is a really good thing, so if you have abundance and you've saved up enough where you feel comfortable, you have a good life going, and you have, like, endless money to spend, well, why don't you try to solve that or, like, look to see what can you fix in this place? As they say in the Scouts, you gotta leave it better than you found it.
Mm. Yeah. Two things.
Mm,
One, in that ramble of very good points, actually, I do
thank you.
appreciate that. Um, you said a line that was very close to a song that I think you would really enjoy, and I think you'd enjoy the band altogether. The band is called AJJ,
Mhm.
and they have a song that is a line of "You're only one or two mistakes away from becoming the people you fear and pity." And I think that's a very powerful line.
Yeah, I had someone recommend I check out AJJ. I checked him out years ago. I felt a little bit indifferent.
Mm.
So I checked him out again, and I, yeah, like a lot of it is that sort of. There's a universality to that, where yeah, we're only 1 or 2 mistakes away from being our worst enemies. So
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah,
The second thing I wanted to mention was even if you like donating to a food bank or donating money, I donate blood. That's another thing you can do if you have the time and capacity for needles. Is blood's really important, and people need it. And if you can donate blood, that's a really great thing to do.
yeah. If you can, if you can't, it's not a huge deal, of course, for like what you feel most comfortable with. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think that's a great. I would agree with that. That um, I know I know a few times I've had to get a bunch of blood draws for medical stuff, and apparently I can donate a lot of blood and not feel it.
Well, that's good.
But I also have deep enough veins where each and every time I make sure that whoever is drawing blood, I just tell them my story about blood drawing, so that way they kind of realize like, "Oh,
You're used to
you've met
this.
someone." Yeah, like, I had someone try to draw blood from me 8 times
Oh,
and
no.
fail, and so telling that to an intrepid, blood drawer,
Uh-huh.
uh, helps because the one time I didn't over the past 2 years was when, they screwed up.
Oh.
And it was like, "Do you need me to come back another day because, you need to get someone else? I'm okay with that, but you can't be experimenting like this. You can't be trying a few times here."
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
Um,
yeah, if you feel comfortable, definitely blood drawing's helpful.
mhm.
I have a little bit of a needle anxiety, I'll say that. That's something that I can harken back to the question about anxieties and concerns, like,
Mm.
yeah, I don't when people inject me with stuff, like with medications, vaccines, stuff like that, like, I just look the other way. I just tell
Mm.
them like, "Yeah,
Mhm.
I just don't like looking."
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
for sure.
so
Yeah, totally. Um, do you wanna move on to the next question?
certainly.
What excites you the most?
The most is when I am in the process of writing.
Mm.
I would say that fundamentally, I get the most joy and the most excitement out of life when I'm in the process of writing whatever it is I'm writing. Um, each day, just there's a certain point. I think about 2/3 of the way through where everything's firing all cylinders, and I'm deeply in tune with my inner self. I am one with who I am outside of the abstract nature of in reality when you're talking to someone or you're engaged in trivial matters, you feel a bit disconnected in life, or I do at least. I feel like there's like you have your brain and you have your hands, and like if you're drawing and you don't feel really comfortable with what you're drawing, then that could be a disconnect. So having that kind of oneness with the writing process is really what excites me most about doing it. That's why I've been doing it for so long and will continue through the rest of my life. I'll be writing pretty much as possible.
That's awesome. Um, that's awesome. I'm glad you have that.
Thank you.
You ready for the next one?
Yeah. Before we do, I'll go ahead and start. Do you mind if I color in your gates?
Go ahead.
Cool. Yeah. So what's the next question?
The next question is not a game, but why did you agree to the game we are playing? It's not a game, but you know what I mean.
Well, as an example, when you talk about game, it could be a matter of like in how do I phrase this best? So Enter the Wu Tang by the Wu Tang Clan. They
Mhm.
talk a lot about the game of life, or they talk about um, everything being like a chess game. There are games that you interact with. So I intuit what you understand or what you say there. I understand what you mean quite well. That this is a bit of a like I was talking about with the album there, that it's performative honesty. That the true honesty is when you meet me as I am in a private environment and we talk about whatever. We talk about life without any kind of external external performance. There's nothing being recorded. That's when you meet the
Mhm.
real me.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, as far as the game of life, or the game of not life, game of recording this, yeah, very similar to what I talked about before in that answer of I like the idea of trying new stuff. I've interviewed people before, both in professional capacities. In the game development realm, I interviewed a lot of game developers. I interviewed people professionally as part of my tech support. I've been in many interviews. The process of doing this is very much just a matter of finding out the answers to things I hadn't thought about.
Mm.
So I like exploring those ideas. I like thinking about like what do I really think and having that kind of honesty. Because I think this is why you didn't want to send me the list up front. Like I'm
Mhm.
going to make a guess here because if I have the list of like, oh, here are all the questions, here's the order you're going to answer them or ask them in, then I can come up with some highfalutin answer. I can come up with some very manufactured honesty. I can give you a version of the truth that is not as close to the truth as I am when we're talking in an environment that is pseudo realistic, pseudo equivalent to being off camera, being not recorded in an environment where you can make mistakes. So,
Mhm.
yeah,
That's
I would say
exactly it.
that.
You're totally right.
Well, kind of funny how I kind of like this is the thing too. Like even if I'm correct in an assessment,
Mhm.
that should not warrant me concluding that my answer being correct here is the same as my answer being correct elsewhere.
Mhm.
Just because I got one answer correct doesn't mean that I get all of them correct.
You're not that omnipotent.
Yeah, you kind of have to be in tech support. You kind of have to predict what people feel because you got to know, like, oh yeah, what I say pisses people off, so I shouldn't say that.
Mm, mhm.
I
Yeah,
shouldn't
that's
lead in with
important.
like, yeah, I shouldn't lead in by saying like, oh yeah, this is done by people that are doing stupid mistakes, and you're stupid. Like, don't do that.
Be nice.
Be nice. Yeah.
Um, all right, next question.
Yeah.
I I think we're coming up pretty close to I'm trying to get through these because if we're not careful, we could reach a 3-hour recording. I don't know if I want that.
Yeah. And I ramble, so
It's okay.
interrupt me or be like, hey, if I'm, yeah, go
Um,
for it.
the next question is what is something you are proud of?
So I'm proud of, I would say most of the recordings I've done over the years. I would say most of all the essays I've written over the years. I'm proud of the first novel I wrote.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm proud of those are all ostensibly things that I have made, right? Those are all
Mhm.
things that I can point to say like I am proud so far of this recording that we've made. Um, when we are all done with it and upload it in our respective whenever's, I'm going to look back and I'm going to be like, yeah, that was fun. I had a good time here. So I can be proud of this recording and I can enjoy this moment right now and say, like, I'm having fun. This is cool. I like this.
Nice. I'm
So
glad.
I can say, yeah, I can say I like this, but then, I mean, that's only somewhat of the answer. That's only half of the answer. The other half is I'm proud of the progress I've made in my life. I'm proud of the mental hurdles I've overcome, the failures I've made. I'm not proud of having made those failures. Say, for example, my sobriety. I'm not proud that I had to become sober. I'm not proud of the circumstances through which I realized, oh, I'm actually a real fucking asshole that no one likes. So I should probably not act that way.
Should probably change that.
I could probably better my life. So that isn't a cool thing. But
Uh-huh.
what is cool is realizing, yeah, April is going to be 10 years. Like that's a long time of
That's very impressive. And I hope
thank
you're proud of yourself. Which you are, which you said you were. So
Yeah, I'm proud of myself, but it's also like proud with regret of having needed to do that.
it's bittersweet.
It is bittersweet. It's like I would rather have had it be like 10 years ago, we figured out enough about reality to where addiction management could be like, hey, you have a problem here. Let's get that fixed. You have
Mhm.
this particular gene that's the problem, or this particular emotional problem that we can fix. Let's get that fixed. So that way, you can get back on that lifestyle where you could have a drink or two, you could have a toke or two and be fine. But for me, it was just like, this is really bad. I can't do that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely been because especially with pain management, like that was a circumstance around April. You have 420, brr, 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 you have
Mhm.
people smoking weed, especially around then. So April 2021, it was like, well, I don't want to engage with that. I want to see what I can figure out outside of that. 2022 was like, okay, I've dealt with this for another year. How can I fix this? And so a lot of that was overcoming my cannabis anxieties about like, why do I not like this? What is really going on here?
Mm.
So I would say that I'm almost prouder of things like that, of being willing to ask myself, okay, what is really the problem here? What is really going on? And fixing that versus just like, I made a thing. Here, look at this thing I made. Like people can make stuff all the time, but fixing your major problems in life is really really heckin' cool.
It is. It is cool.
Yeah,
I'm very glad that you are proud of yourself for that.
thank you.
Um, Next question.
hmm
What is your most prized possession and why?
So that is an interesting question to ask someone like myself, who I was a former hoarder throughout my entire life, and
Mm.
now I am someone who is very much I wouldn't say anti-materialistic. But I would definitely say that I don't value materialism. So one might say in the video game community that I casually reside within sometimes, that one might say your copy of Earthbound, uh, cart only at the
Mm.
moment,
Mhm.
is your prized possession. People could tell me because Earthbound is a rare game, thanks to the Starman.net community for driving out the price on that. So that could be my most valuable possession. But for me, even though that was the game that got me into literature, that got me into the path I am in today, even though that is where my namesake derives from, it's just another cartridge. It's just another piece of plastic that happens to be worth more money than the piece of plastic that's next to it. Um, so for physical property, you might also say, well, your car or whatever kind of physical possession that you own. I mean, the car is nice. The car lets me drive around, but I don't value it as like people value classic cars or race cars or anything like that. It's a piece of property. So thinking about anything else like that, nothing book wise, nothing. I mean, even photographs. I have photographs of my childhood puppy Patrick that I love, and I think about all the time when I see those photos. I think like, wow, what a cool little buddy I had.
Yeah, Patrick's
But
great.
yeah, Patrick's really really fun. He was a really fun loving kind of dog. He was just like he just loved hanging out and relaxing. He wasn't the kind of adventuring kind of dog. He was just like, hey, it's another day where I can hang out at home. This is nice. So
Life's good.
maybe lazy, but I don't think of him as lazy. He's just like he knew where he liked to hang out. He liked to hang out at home. He didn't like to go out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something like that. You might say like, "Oh, those pictures of Patrick," but I've uploaded them online. They're readily available for anyone to go take a look at and see his smiling face and think, "Wow, what a good dog he was."
What a
He
good
was a
pupper.
yeah, he was a good pupper. So something like that, maybe. But yeah, it's like I think of so this is a very deep question that would or yeah, deep answer that would probably be another 20 minutes to answer in full. So what if we just kind of leave it at that unless you have any other questions on that topic?
No, I think that works really well.
Cool.
You can also color in this origami thing that I drew.
Oh yeah, let's do that. Where'd it go?
It's right
Oh,
here
you
next to
moved it.
you. Yeah, I moved it. Made it bigger. I really
You
like
did
it.
make it bigger.
I think it's cool. I like the shapes of it.
Yeah. What color do you think it should be?
I don't know. I
Uh,
like I like blue.
you do like blue.
I like blue a lot. um Next question is, how do you take care of yourself?
So what I do is I constantly ask myself how I'm doing,
Mhm.
and I constantly figure out, am I doing things well or not well? So, for example, like it would be a matter of saying like 2 days ago I ate some ravioli that made me feel kind of sick.
Mhm.
And so that was a weird kind of thing to encounter because I've had that happen with the same kind of cans of ravioli and such.
Mhm.
Um, so the first time it was like a bit of a fluke.
Mhm.
Second time it happened, I was like,
That's a coincidence.
"That's a real big problem," because
Yeah.
so when I get headaches, they're typically tension headaches around the neck.
Oh, not
Uh,
fun.
Not fun. So, for medical terminology, my levator scapula muscles, which are the neck muscles that tie in to either side, if you move your neck from side to side, that muscle that kind of tenses there,
Mhm.
that's the levator scapula muscle.
Mhm.
Uh, Levator like elevator minus the first e.
Mhm.
So that muscle gets tense, and I'm going to physical therapy in part to work on that muscle, along with the other elevator muscle that was the source of my disability. So this is something I'm educated and aware of. That doing exercises like chin tucks will help with headaches I have because my 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 body is kind of not the best vessel, so I have to learn how to fix myself. Kind of like auto mechanics. They're like
Yeah.
they want to buy the best battery because they can carry tools. They can fix things live on the road. They can pull over and like work on this or that, but they can't fix a battery while they're
Mhm.
driving.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say like stuff like that. Yeah, I try to check into myself and I try to see like, am I acting like a fool? Am I doing anything dumb? And so like a good example yesterday, we've been doing Z bashes over on Z Discord
Mhm.
on Saturdays more often now. But right when I started the first, like I put the announcement out and I was kind of like, wow, I feel like, well, I felt like I was having a headache and just not feeling well
Mhm.
before that. But as we were kind of getting into it, I was just like, I can't do it. I don't want to push myself because um the good thing about like doing this recording today is that this is really good pacing for my tomorrow.
Mm.
Because I can say like, oh yeah, I have this recording to do, and then I might do a little bit more later. But because of this recording, I have to make sure I'm fit enough mentally and physically to do this. So I can't say like be up until like 5 a.m. and then
Mhm.
record this. So I can't do that. And that helps me pace myself to make sure I do things well. And yeah, just a lot of checking in to see like how are you doing, what's going on, that sort of thing. So
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you do that.
thank you.
I do that. I think for myself a lot too. I was like, I'm doing a lot of self monitoring a lot, and I'm trying to give myself a lot of grace for like if I'm not feeling it, that's okay. I don't need to feel
Yeah.
it.
Well, speaking of this as well, do you mind if I step away for like 5 or less minutes?
Sure.
Thanks. I will be right back.
Okay, we're gonna take a little bit of a break.
Hey, I'm back.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
How was your break?
It was really good. It's one of those. I will say that part of self care includes noticing when you have a problem you need to tend to, figuring out the priority of that event, and then depending on that nature, you say, can I defer that for a few minutes, or a few hours, a few days, or do I need to tend to that immediately? And that situation was more of an immediate thing then.
Mm-hmm.
So
No
yeah, I'm
problem.
back.
All
Thank you.
right. Well, we've only got like two more questions, so we're almost done.
Cool.
You ready for the next one?
Yes.
What is a question you wish for me to ask you?
Those are always good interview kind of questions. So like, do you have any questions for me? It's like, I get the job kind of question. So let's see. I've always enjoyed the when I watch a lot of interviews, I listen to a lot of what people talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I always enjoy hearing about like things that maybe it's like the kind of unexpected things of like so you might be interviewing like someone who does chess.
Mm-hmm.
So you like chess, but tell us about like what kind of video games you like. Kind of a
Like that's
because you
not
get
yeah.
it's not related in a way, but in another way, it's a way to understand that we are well-rounded people. That we only see one side of of others. The cognitive miser idea you
Mm-hmm.
presented before,
Yeah.
where it's easier not to look at a person in full.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of yeah, I'm kind of like maybe buying time, maybe trying to think of a good question that you could ask me. Um, because yeah, I like to hear what people say. Um, but as far as a question that you should ask me, um, for the sake of an interview, um, I can't think of anything because
All right.
I'm fairly transparent as a person. Like I say, like I'm an open book minus one or two chapters. I think most people are like that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe more so. So yeah, like you've asked a lot of good questions so far about who inspires me, what inspires me, um, what I like most. You asked about fears. You asked about um, yeah, I can't think of anything there.
Okay. No problem. That's okay.
Cool.
That's totally all right. You ready for the last one?
Hmm.
When are you the happiest?
When I'm writing,
Okay, that's what I thought.
uh, yeah, that was like I think I already answered
I
that,
think
but
you
it's
did,
also
but that's okay.
but I can give this as so this is something I've come up with as general kind of so I don't give unsolicited advice.
Mm-hmm.
So this don't take this as unsolicited advice. Take this as more of like a guideline through which I learned about what makes me happy.
Mm-hmm.
So this notion is basically the idea where if you have a normal work week, so you work 40 hours doing your job and you're kind of miserable there because you don't like it too much. So, okay, so you have your weekends, right? It could be
Mhm.
Saturday, Sunday. If you work retail, it could be any day of the week. Um, so your first day, you're probably going to be spending like cleaning up around your place or doing groceries or whatever. So let's say your Saturday is your work weekend, a day where you're fixing up something or you're doing something of some capacity where you need to attend to it. So okay, cool. What are you doing on your other day off? Now, a lot of people might just rest. They might play a video game. Might watch a TV show or whatever,
Mhm.
and that's fine. That's good. However, I like to think of it like if you are fundamentally unhappy with your life, if you feel like you can't derive any pleasure from your life, this is not medical advice. So don't take it as such. This is not in place of going to a psychologist to talk about what kind of things might be going on with your life. It's just more of, for me, my general discontent in life, my general
Mhm.
unhappiness. So what I realized is like, okay, if I have that idle Sunday, what if I did something with that day? What if I made something that could make me happy? What
Mm.
would that be? So that eventually I realized was the writing stuff. So
Mm.
which eventually turned into the podcasting, art, all that kind of junk there. So
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff that I like to do sometimes, but maybe not as much as writing. So that was the route through which I experimented to find my happiness,
Mhm.
and that involved also like, do I like to draw? I do, but this is the first time I've really done any kind of big drawing since the last time I worked on that album cover. Otherwise, I do little bits of drawing here and there. Um, so yeah, I'd say something like that. I'd say like for me, I experimented to find what I find happiest in life, and the answer of writing actually was kind of surprising because like, oh, well, that sucks. There's no money in that.
I mean, there could be, but it's a lot of effort.
Yeah, it's a lot of effort for like compared to like doing a broadcast, like it's a lot easier of a time to make money on that. But
Yeah.
why not do both and specialize like finding out like people play chess on Twitch.
Mhm.
Like that's something that people do that I don't particularly enjoy chess, but like learning that was kind of like, oh yeah, people watch whatever they want. That's really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, just that's my way of advocating for people to find their own happiness in a low stakes environment is just figure out what you want to do that you like doing, that you're maybe productive at, that you could maybe use to sell as a product. Or if you like watching TV or listening to music, okay, can you write a review on that?
Mhm.
There's a market for that out there too. And the reason why I say that is because within the system that we reside within, we live in a society, as they say, where
We do. Indeed, we do.
I haven't watched that movie, but it's one of those kind of
It's a meme.
colloquialisms, yeah, that digs in deep. That
Yes.
it's like you have to be productive through some means. And I would almost argue too that the productivity of having done something is part of the pleasure of the overall aspect of it. Where you listen to this podcast, you're probably watching maybe fully, maybe partially, but when I always listen to podcasts, I have something else going on in the background. I'm listening to the podcast while I'm doing anything from eating, which is very surface level, to I'm writing. Well, not really writing. I should clarify. I write while listening to music. I will be drawing, or I'll be working on some stuff in my life. So the process of, say, listening to a video or a podcast and then drawing something means that when I look at that picture, I think of, oh yeah, I remember I was watching that video while I was doing that 30 minutes of working on that carpet.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
in that way, it's like even listening to this podcast, you can be productive if you're using this time in that kind of manner. And that could be a good way to interact with us as a sort of, we're rambling, or I'm rambling, you're
I'm
guiding
listening.
the, you're listening. And hopefully the intention that I have is that when you conclude listening, that you've learned a little bit about me in a way that's positive. And if there's anything negative that you learned about me, I hope that you would let me know so I can
Hmm.
work on that. And yeah, I hope that that's what makes me the most happiest, to kind of bring it all back. Is makes me the most happiest when I mean, like every once in a while, I'll strike a chord with someone in a really positive way, and that person will be like, "Wow, that really was cool." Oh, this is a good example of something that made me really happy. If you want to hear it,
Sure.
so I got into doing podcasting because I was doing a random video game play along kind of a thing. It was
Hmm.
this game of Reedy, which is just a plant growing game.
Mm.
So I basically for like 2 hours I was just growing plants and hanging out.
Oh, that sounds great.
So it was a really good fun time. But through the nature of just broadcasting, it was like, well, what are we going to talk about?
Mm. Hmm.
So I'm going to get some water and then explain. So the I am talking about someone that was a bit of a troll in an environment I was in,
Mm.
and showing like how that was handled, what all happened. And this was in a community with a bunch of broadcasters that were all like, we get trolls and we don't know what to do.
Mm.
Like Twitch has no training material on that. There's no like guided course of like, what do you do when someone is a bully to your members of your community? What do you do on that?
Hmm.
So it was just one of those, like, that was the first time that I think some of these people were able to publicly say, like, yeah, this is a problem. I don't know what to do. I want to play a video game and have a good performance, a good time with everyone. Then what happens when someone comes in and says something stupid or says a slur? What do I do?
Yeah, that's
No one
tough.
really, yeah, no one really thinks about it. So in that example, I was doing a little bit of the puppetry stuff that I tend to do with OBS.
Hmm.
I,
Hmm.
I'm a bit of an OBS witch when it comes to like you see all sorts of weird stuff going on with my recordings and just like, what the heck? Okay, that's happening.
Yeah.
So then after that, I had two separate people that these are both people whose names I'm not going to say, but they are people with communities of some number quantifiably more than mine that
Hmm.
were both like, wow, that was really cool what you're doing there. That was like, we need more of that.
Mm.
I was just like, sure.
Validation. Nice.
It was that validation. And to be clear, I'm not really huge into that. Like, I don't really get, how do I want to phrase this? What I do, a majority of it, 75% of it, when when I work on it and when it's uploaded, it's done. I'm on to the next project. I'm not thinking about, oh yeah, what if I want to tinker this or do that?
Mm-hmm.
It's done. It's up for other people to evaluate now. So there isn't a whole lot of me thinking about that. But when other people tell me, yeah, that was really inspirational for me, that really helped me go along in a good route where now I think more about moderation. I'm a little bit more able to handle this. I'm able to discuss that with my moderators or my audience. I feel a little bit more equipped to handle this.
Hmm.
Like, wow, I can make a difference.
Yeah.
Why don't I do that versus play video games poorly?
uh, I gotta say, I really like what you've done with the origami. It looks great.
Thank you.
I really, really like it.
Yeah, I was going for a bit of like darker to lighter, but
Hmm.
I also didn't really plan it out super duper well, so I'm glad that you like it overall.
I do. Um, yeah, I think, well, so that's all the questions. And
Okay.
I think we've done a good work here. I think we've done great.
I think we have two, and we're under 3 hours.
Yeah, just barely. So, if you have watched the entire video and have survived the almost 3 hours, you should probably go subscribe to Zombie Paper. He's on YouTube. Sorry, they are on YouTube, and they're neat.
Thank you. Yeah, my gender stuff is kind of weird, so don't
I
worry about it
forget
too much.
sometimes, and I'm sorry.
It's all good. Especially like going into a normie corporate job, I'm gonna have to like adapt to that
Yeah.
versus my preferred perspective. So uh, don't bother none compared to like it, especially with intentions, right?
Hmm.
And so I look at it like that. Sorry to ramble like that, but yeah, I do the YouTube stuff right now because my OBS doesn't connect to Twitch on this laptop. Uh, I hope soon to get a new laptop to then broadcast onto Twitch, and that'll be
That'd be nice.
it would be nice to connect back in with my old communities of folks, because it
Yeah.
is it this is a good kind of like wind down kind of thought where when I stopped being able to broadcast onto Twitch, I adapted gears by doing more research stuff and more introspective material. So I'll go through and I'll research medical stuff or podcast topics. I'll do more of like the arts that in an environment like this where we don't have the audience to be our primary focus, we can talk about a topic at length. So we can talk
Hmm.
about these questions where the fundamental focus in a broadcasting space is not the video game you're playing, not the art you're drawing, but the person that says hello. Because that
Yeah.
person that says hello is there because they picked you versus the millions of other people out there.
Literally millions. Yeah.
So, yeah, that'll be interesting to get back into that at a bigger community than I get some people on the YouTube side, and that's always really cool. But
Hmm.
it'll be like getting back in a big way. It'll be like, not only am I back, but I'm back with newfound experiences and knowledge.
Hmm. Which will be cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um. Let's see what else. I'm still trying to figure out my routine for wrapping this thing up, but thank you. Oh, that's us with this. Thank you, Zombie Paper, for doing this with me. I hope you had fun. I hope you enjoyed.
I did. I had quite a lot of fun. You asked some really good questions. I really liked the level of insight that you had with asking these questions. I got a cough here one more time. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I just don't want to be rude to the audience when I cough. So,
For sure. No, it's okay.
so yeah, like the questions you asked were really, really good from like asking thought provoking questions that weren't that weren't super like there's no gotcha moment. There's no like, ah, I got you there.
Yeah, I totally. Thank you. I'm glad. I don't want to do that. Yeah, no.
Yeah,
But I'm really glad that you enjoyed, and I'll look forward to editing this and posting it.
editing it down and finding all the like you could edit out the tangents is like half the time.
I mean, yeah, that's what I'm gonna have to do, but
I'm sorry, the audience. I'm sorry, Silver Storm, as well, for
no, no,
having to
no,
like.
it's okay. That's what the uncut version is for.
Heck yeah, and that I'll be uploading that on my side too. Maybe we'll have it in like here's the part on on your side, since you're capturing video and all that,
Mhm.
I'm capturing video on my side,
Yeah.
so we can both like if someone's like, how did Zombie Paper make that? It's like, this
This
is
is
what
how.
all happened.
Yeah. No, for sure. For sure. All right. Well, I think this is a great place to stop. So thank you for
Indeed.
again, thank you for doing this with me, Zombie Paper. And thank you, the listener, for listening and watching. I hope you enjoyed this. And yeah, I don't know how to end this, so I'm just gonna end it. Bye.